guys, I'm Josh Douglas, and I want to talk to you guys about one of my favorite times to go fishing, and that's now, springtime. More in particular, I want to talk to you about the spawn. Lately, I've been going out on my home lake, Lake Minnetonka, and I've been able to go out and I've just pushed the bank. You know, as a rule of thumb, I'm always out on Lake Minnetonka. I'm using my electronics. I'm trying to find those schools of fish out deep, and this is the one time a year I can leave my electronics off. All I'm looking for is I want to know what the water temp is and check out some of those good Navionics sonar charts of those ideal flats that fish are going to get on. And I want to get up there and I want to put my trolling motor on 100, cruise the bank, throwing an outcast swim jig, or one of my favorites would be a wacky rig Cinco. A wacky rig Cinco is great this time of year when you're cruising the banks and just looking for them. I'm going down, I'm looking for fish on beds that I can catch. I can see how big they are. The environment is rich. The shallows, they just get flooded with all kinds of species. You see big muskies, crappies, minnows, bluegills, you name it, and most importantly, bass, and lots of them. And basically, I'm just gonna put my trolling motor on 100, I'm gonna cruise the bank, and I'm gonna look for them, and I'm gonna toss that swim jig, or I'm gonna throw a wacky rig Cinco. Both of them are great presentations. One tip with my wacky rig Cinco that I would like to say is 90% of the time, I would always use just straight fluorocarbon on this setup. But this time of year, it's real important to make long casts and keep those fish. You got to stay away from them. You know, they're spooky. They're in the shallows. They've been getting chased around, just framed in, and a long cast is just so important. So this is the one time a year that I will go braid to a fluorocarbon leader, and that just helps, again, make a long cast and even more so a big hook set that I'm going to hook up with that fish from a long distance away, especially if I am indeed with my trolling motor on 100 just cruising. When I find a fish, that's the best part. I absolutely love when I fish are on beds. It's fun for me. You know, when I first got into it, I wasn't very good at it. I didn't have the confidence in what I was doing. And a lot of times the fish, they will just eat the bait. You can just, if they don't see you, but if the fish is seeing you and they know you're there, or they're spooky at all, or they're just not quite committed to the bed, it can be a very, very difficult task to try to catch those fish. And I've found some ways to make it a whole heck of a lot easier. One thing is big, it's like picking on your girlfriend. You gotta kind of annoy the fish into biting. They're chasing stuff away from their bed. They don't actually want to eat your bait. They're not hungry. I don't even think they actually eat during the spawn, but things annoy them. Bluegills are in there trying to get at their eggs, and they're extremely territorial. They're chasing everything away, and you can use that to your advantage. There's really only two baits that I use anymore when it comes to sight fishing. Of course, the swim jig and throwing that wacky rig Cinco, that'll peg them off. You know, if you happen to hit their bed and you don't know they're there, they'll probably bite it every single time. But if you're visually looking at them, you got to watch the fish. And I have two baits that I like to use. The first one is a reaction ovation beaver, and it's white. It's probably the only time of year I use a white one. One little tip here is there's a hog farmer hog nut rattle on here. There's something about it. I use it in red. They seem to get on it. I use this bait to annoy the fish, and I use a reins, a little bit heavier, 3/8, 5/16, something that's going to get on the bed, stay on the bed. I can shake the bait, but I can really get the fish going. I can annoy the fish, and the reason I use white is green pumpkin will work, of course. Any color will work. The thing about white is I can see white. That fish, again, doesn't want to eat. Strictly just wants to get this thing away from it. It's territorial. It gets mad at it. And white is a color that I can see from a long distance. Being able to stay away from the fish, using good sunglasses, my polarized amphibias, to be able to see in the water and see what that fish is doing. Watch for it. They'll fin. They'll start to get real mad and nose down at baits when you're starting to get it set up. And this is just a bait that I can set them up, I can get them on there, and if I can't catch them outright, I can definitely annoy them into biting. My favorite bait, all around, my favorite setup for bed fishing is a drop shot. I use a Biovex Kolt Tail. We got awesome footage of this stuff underwater, as you guys can see, and there's something about this bait. It's the Biovex Kolt Tail. It has bubbles in it. It's realistic, but most importantly, it looks like all the minnows. It looks so typical of all the things that bass are trying to chase away from the bed, that they're trying to get rid of. And it's in a bite-sized offering. If they eat this, it's usually 1 or 2 bites and it's completely in their mouth. And again, this IU color, it's such a great color. It's realistic, but I can see it for so far. It just glows back at me. And as soon as that thing disappears, bam, I'm setting the hook and I got that fish. And 90% of the time I can get them with this setup. I'm confident with the spinning rod. I'm using this is the Biovex AGS. It's a 7-foot medium light action, using braid, only about 10-pound tests on my Suffix braid, and I'm using a 8-pound Seeger fluorocarbon leader. This combination is absolutely ideal. It loads up on the fish, it keeps them loaded, and sometimes they bite finicky. You know, again, they don't want the bait. They're not trying to eat it for food. They're trying to crush it and just get it away. And the setup, you don't always get the best of hook sets. You miss fish, or even worse, sometimes that you get a big one on and you lose them at the boat, and that's heartbreaking. And this setup just helps me there's not a lot of appendages to it. There's not much there. The action of the rod, the braid, the fluorocarbon, it's the perfect setup to hook up with even the worst of bites and keep that fish and get that fish in the boat. And check out this video. It was a great time on Lake Minnetonka. My best buddy Keegan, my Rottweiler, was out there with me. We had a blast. We caught so many big ones all day. I hope you enjoy the underwater footage. Pretty intense. Check me out at joshdouglasfishing.com. Tight lines.